Okay, so in the interest of trying to uh, always use our technology to try to create dynamic learning experiences for ourselves, I'm going to do something a little bit different um, with this second discussion post for our discussion post assignment number two. Um, so I'm going to do a video post, and then I'll use the transcript of it, probably edit it down a little bit so it's a quick, it's not a long read, and then I'll post both the word, the text version of it, as well as the video version of it, and then you can decide which one you want to use. You want to view the video post or just read the text post, and then you can respond in kind. If you don't have to make a video post, but if you want to do that in lieu of a text post, you're welcome to do that. Just trying to create dynamic learning experiences for you. So, okay. So the article from PBS News that was from yesterday, Medicare patients go without needed treatment as government shutdown disrupts telehealth. Okay, so why this article? So it's a current event. That part's pretty obvious, right? So what is? Just look at my notes here. So how's it? So I want to do two things, right? Current event, something that's like obviously like unfolding, as we speak, and then how does it relate? Then something also that relates to not just the course, but an aspect of the course that we've talked about in one of the modules or multiple modules between the time of the first discussion post and this discussion post assignment. All right. So this article, in my opinion, relates to some of the aspects of course content in the following ways. So, um, the people who are, and lots of different people are potentially affected by this disruption to telehealth services, and some providers electing to pause offering telehealth based services, um, until the government shutdown ends or until there's some kind of commitment from the federal government that telehealth will be continue to be reimbursed through Medicare. The people who are most directly affected are the ones who rely on telehealth because they have chronic conditions that impact their mobility, um, and a lot of times people who have conditions, like some of the conditions that are mentioned in here, have chronic pain, or at least some level of chronic pain as part of their health challenges, in addition to mobility impacts. So that relates to our pain management, and our chronic pain management aspect that we were talking about. The other thing that's mentioned in this article is that this impact is not just to patients or clients themselves, but potentially also to home-based and family care providers. And so that relates to what we're talking about in terms of family members providing home care, and in some cases hospice home care. So that's where I saw the connection between this current event article and some of the things we specifically covered in between the first discussion uh, and this one. Okay, so. And then the other aspect is that I'm both a Medicare provider myself and provide telehealth services to clients, including Medicare recipients. So I could offer something about that. So just quickly going through the article you see here, this is just a brief history on how COVID, really, and again, this is all stuff I'm sure you know well. There was virtually no access to telehealth for mental health or behavioral health or any type of health care. Very, very few and far between before the pandemic. The one thing that's interesting, we'll come back to this in a second, is that the telehealth expansion actually happened under Trump. And so just something is noteworthy, and I'll tell you why it might be noteworthy in a moment. Um, so as we go on to read here, and of course, there's some personal stories that we see one at the top about people who are personally affected and their family care providers. But we also see a sense of about 4 million Medicare. beneficiaries access healthcare, at least part of the healthcare through telehealth. Um, and that we see some anecdotal evidence of providers who are considering or have at least paused, if not stopped altogether, their offering of telehealth services. The other thing that was notable in the article was the one physician who said, um, that the noted that the at least with one uh, patient client that this doctor works with, that person, because they didn't have access to those regular preventative and maintenance checkups via um, telehealth, that they ended up in the emergency room. Okay, so um, and then we see here at Hopkins, so the medical director of the Office of Telemedicine at Hopkins uh, was saying that they had stopped offering telehealth services to Medicare recipients as of October 16th, okay, after it was apparent that the shutdown was going to not resolve quickly. Then we see a the executive director of Center for Connected Health Policy, makes a note, and this is also, I think, noteworthy, and I'll summarize that in a second, why, that the government shutdown does not have to be fully resolved for this to be resolved, or at least have a temporary, somewhat of a temporary fix, if you will, and that is that the Congress could vote separately to expand, and this is not an obligation of money. This is just policy, to continue uh, to renew the policy around telehealth expansion. Okay. Um, so a couple things on just offering of reflections. So um, well, let's talk about the macro level first. So if you were involved in or had an interest in being involved in advocacy at this level, what might be things we can take away from this? Well, one, this is a Trump policy, and that's completely my personal opinion. So it's my own take on it. Um, Trump, if he, the fact that the telehealth policy happened under him, and he can, and I think there's evidence to support this in like his sort of two minds about vaccines, because while he does seem to sign on for a lot of the MAHA stuff coming out of HHS and RFK Jr., he also at the same time tends to crow a bit about um, the Warp Speed project and getting COVID vaccines out to people. And he seems to like, it just comes back to it often, or at least relatively often. So maybe there's something there in that if he himself feels like, oh, well, this was my idea about the telehealth expansion, maybe he'd be more open to and advocating for it to himself in terms of advocating, meaning telling the GOP control Congress that I want you to do this in terms of voting separately on it. The other thing is that there are a lot of members of that GOP controlled Congress that are, or GOP members of that GOP controlled Congress that are her seats are up next year. And as we've seen in some couple other articles in the course, that that they're taking a bit of a political risk by signing on to this government shutdown, as we're taking the no pun intended party line on it, because many of their constituents are going to be directly and significantly impacted by the changes in healthcare cost and the potential loss of access to healthcare coverage, either through Medicaid or through the healthcare exchange. So it's a political risk for them, and they know it. So the idea of being able, well, you could vote separately on this and expand the policy. There's not dollars necessarily directly um, associated with this, and with voting on this, you're just renewing a policy and keeping a policy going about telehealth expansion and telehealth reimbursement um, for Medicare recipients. That would be much less politically risky than saying, well, I want to end the government shutdown. So those are just those are just my own personal thoughts about what the opportunities might be at the advocacy macro level. And then so finally, well, what could you possibly do if you're in this position yourself, if you're working in a group practice or someday working in your own practice and you were presented with a similar situation about, well, if I don't know if I'm going to get paid, how can I continue to provide services, right? That's a tough personal choice because because you might well, it's a tough personal choice for obvious reasons, right? You want to provide services, you want to do the right thing, you want to be a good social worker, but you have to pay your bills just like everybody else does, right? So a couple things on that. One is to take a mix of insurances. Now it's a administrative burden, especially if you're doing it yourself, to be credentialed in lots of different insurances and or at least like a half a dozen or so of the most major insurances, commercial insurances, as well as Medicare or in Medicaid, in the state you're practicing in. But the willingness to do that creates less risk for you. So if you're seeing all Medicare clients, so if any of these providers who are quoted in this who are seeing all Medicare providers, well, there's a much bigger decision. But if you have a mix, like I do, of Medicare clients as well as clients, a bunch of different commercial insurers that are not, at least for now, making any indication that that you're going to stop paying, telehealth services, that shield that might make that decision a little bit easier, and you might feel more comfortable taking, continuing to provide Medicare services if you're not sure you're going to get reimbursed. The other thing that you can do, and I'll post up a screenshot of this for you guys, is you can, and again, only if you're, as you go on in your social work careers, if you're interested in doing this, but if you have the interest and the willingness to sort of understand the technologies about claims processing, which is not like writing code or anything. It's just um, logging on, having direct access through your own provider login to, in this case, the Medicare page. And of course, it's not Medicare; it's whoever the contractor is that's providing the Medicare management and wherever you're practicing. You can see the status of your claims. So, for instance, for me, what I noticed a couple weeks into October, that claims that I had that I could see on this dashboard had disappeared. And so I followed it and I didn't say anything to those clients. I just monitored it for a couple more weeks. And then I noticed some of them reappeared and some of them did not. So I resubmitted the ones that did not reappear. And then the resubmissions appeared in the dashboard. I can't fully show you the dashboard, but I can, because without reviewing PHI, but I can show you the header, what the dashboard looks like without the actual data in the dashboard that has the client's information in it. So I can share that with you. But that's another way. So one of the things I'm doing is watching those claims. Like, are they getting posted? Do they appear to be in processed? And then, this was a whole like thing, acknowledge they're received, acknowledge they're in process, and then as they're getting paid, you see that as well. And they'll post that they're paid before you actually receive the payment. So that's another way that you can, if you found yourself in that position, you can kind of get a sense of like, well, are these getting paid or not, in your own practice or in a group practice that you're part of, or in an agency that you're part of. Anybody that bills, if you bill Medicare for services, you don't have to be like in a private practice counseling type of agency. You can be in any agency where you're billing Medicare for services. So that's my post for all of this. Hopefully you'll find this interesting, engaging. Like I said, I'm going to take the transcript version and edit it down so you're not reading everything I just said in this. And I can I have a couple screenshots I'm going to include with the post just to provide additional illustrations. So hope this is helpful to you, and hope it's a good learning experience. And I'm definitely looking forward to reading your responses or watching them if you decide to do video.